We're recording. The tea is piping hot. I don't know how this is gonna go. This is me trying. Let's get started with the intro. Hey y'all, this is Racially Coded, the show that examines how race and language intertwine. I'm your host, Jewelz. Welcome. Today on Racially Coded, we are discussing the term peanut gallery. So the term peanut gallery is used for hecklers or, unasked for, unvalued opinions. I'm going to play for you 4 clips of an example, in case you're unfamiliar with this term.
My thanks to the peanut gallery.
Quiet in the peanut gallery, please.
Enough from the peanut gallery. Into the water, lady.
Blah, blah, blah from the peanut gallery.
I have definitely used peanut gallery before. Make that very clear. So this was kind of a fun, interesting exercise to jump into. The phrase originates from the early 19th century during vaudeville, which, along with the Statue of Liberty, is a gift from the French. Vaudeville was a popular form of entertainment in the 1880s. It was 15 to 18 individual acts that weren't really related to each other. It could be jugglers, magicians, dancers, trained animals. Think variety show. And vaudeville theaters, much like every other thing in the 1800s, was racially segregated. So the Black patrons sat in the back of the theaters, way up top in the balcony, while white patrons sat, in all the other seats. Now, during my research for this, there was some debate as to whether or not this was racially motivated. People wanted to make it more of a class issue and less of a racial issue, which I'm not shocked that people don't want things to be based on race, but sometimes they are. But even if we're going to go down that avenue, I think I would ask, why couldn't the Black people afford, better seating than the balcony? Could it possibly be that the Black patrons had previously spent centuries building this country and being enslaved? Just a thought. I don't know. What do you think? Yeah, I think it's racially motivated that the Black people sat in the back. It seems really odd to think that desegregation of schools didn't happen until 1954. But somehow during vaudeville theaters, we were allowed to sit next to each other. That doesn't make sense. In the book, Listening to America, an illustrated history of words and phrases from our lively and splendid past, the author, Stuart Flexner, states, peanut gallery was in use in the 1880s as a synonym for N-word gallery in the 1840s, or N-word heaven in the 1870s. This was the upper balcony where Black people sat, as in segregated theaters. So I don't really understand why people were trying to make it not about race like it was. So as I delved deeper into the origins of this phrase, I started to wonder why peanut specifically was used. Peanuts were, and some may argue still are, not heavily respected. In today's society, in 2022, we are still able to say, I'm working for peanuts, and we understand that to mean that you're not pulling in a lot of dough. That job is bringing in an insignificant amount of money. As a reminder, peanuts are legumes and a source of protein and minerals and vitamins. So I just want to give peanuts their props, okay? Peanuts are rooted in Blackness. Let's get into it. In the 1700s, Africans were the first people to introduce peanuts to North America. I want to be specific when I say North America, because it is likely that the peanut plant originated in Peru or Brazil. South American pottery as early as 3,500 could be found in the shape of peanuts or with jars adorned with peanut imagery. They was all about the peanuts. As early as 15 BC, The Incans of Peru used peanuts as sacrificial offerings and entombed them with their mummies to aid in spiritual life. So they really felt that the peanut was that important, which, hey, do you? Who am I to say the peanut's not that important to be buried with? Tribes in central Brazil would ground up peanuts and mix that with maize to make a tasty beverage. I'm assuming it's tasty. I don't know. I didn't taste it. I'm over here with tea that doesn't have sugar, so. Let's shift back to North America, where peanuts were first grown commercially in the 1800s in the great state of Virginia, where I am from. During this time, peanuts were mainly used as a cocoa substitute or for oil, and was seen as food for livestock and the poor. And they were considered difficult to grow and harvest. Well, that's when Black agricultural scientist Mr. George Washington Carver entered the chat. He developed over 300 different products from the peanut plant, even though his work is largely reduced to peanut butter. Peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter, peanut butter. Mr. Carver worked to develop sustainable farming and encouraged farmers to use other crops besides cotton that would revitalize the soil, like cow plants, peas, sweet potatoes, and peanuts. In 1916, he authored the pamphlet, How to Grow the Peanut and 105 Ways to Prepare It for Human Consumption. Peanuts grew in popularity because of war times, but also because P.T. Barnum was traveling around and shucking peanuts. And yes, that is the same P.T. Barnum of P.T. Barnum Ringley Brothers. So yeah, the circus really helped with getting the word out about the peanuts. Which brings us back to the theater because, yes, people did chuck peanuts in these vaudeville theaters. Peanuts were a inexpensive theater treat, and so they threw them when they didn't like the performance. And yes, I do see a clear correlation with the cheap seats and the cheap snacks and equating that cheapness with blackness. There's a racial undertone to equating blackness with cheapness. I don't think that same standard applies with white people and the cheapness. I could be wrong. I could be very, very wrong, but what I'm talking about here are racial dynamics. We must not ignore the racial dynamics of every moment because they're always at play. Just as gender dynamics are always at play, so are racial dynamics. For instance, when women and gay men call each other bitch, it doesn't hit the same way as if a cisgendered straight man calls either one of these groups a bitch. That's perceived as very problematic and not okay. But they can say it to each other because there are gender dynamics at work here. This holds true for racial dynamics as well. It's similar to how when you say boy to a black child, it hits different. There's a racial undertone there in comparison to saying boy to a white child. There's no racism attached to that. Speaking of children, the phrase peanut gallery really took off in 1943 when Buffalo Bob Smith from the Howdy Doody show used the phrase to refer to his audience, which were all children, and they were all white, and he was white, and everybody on set was white. So there was no racial undertone with this popularization of the phrase. Another popular kids' entertainment source may be connected to this phrase, and that's Peanuts from Charlie Brown, Charles Schulz. Peanuts actually started as a comic strip in a newspaper. And for those of you who don't remember what a newspaper is, well, a newspaper is a old publication. I'm just kidding. I certainly hope you know what a newspaper is. Anyway, Charles Schulz, the creator and cartoonist behind the comic book strip, originally named the strip Little Folks. But in 1950, the strip became syndicated, and United Feature Syndicate, the executives, thought that there might be a copyright issue because there was another cartoon named Little Folks. Not Little Folk, Little Folk, like they went with the full name. They foresaw a issue with Little Folks and Little Folks. I could see where you would think, confusion. Schulz suggested Charlie Brown or good old Charlie Brown, but The executives didn't go in that direction. They wanted peanuts. It's likely they were attempting to capitalize on the popularity of the phrase, thanks to Howdy Doody. Charles Schulz famously hated the name Peanuts for his own comic strip. He called it undignified, and on the Charles Schulz website, he is quoted as saying, "I don't like the name of my strip at all. I wanted to call it Good Old Charlie Brown, but the person at Syndicate who selected Peanuts just picked it out of random lists of possible titles he jotted down. He hadn't even looked at the strip when he named it. Once I rebelled and sent it in without any title. We finally agreed to put Peanuts at the top and include Charlie Brown and his gang in the subtitle on Sunday." Isn't that wild? Thanks for coming on this little journey with me. I find origin stories to be interesting, and I hope you did too, or at least you found this to be somewhat entertaining. Words and phrases change over time, so I'm definitely not telling you how to talk. I'm simply exploring how race and language intertwine. See you next time.